request our Center President, Uncle Vijay, to welcome our guest of honor, Dr. David Charles Jones.
Sairam, now it's my special privilege to introduce to you our guest of honor, who is none other than Dr. David Jones from University of Calgary. Dr. Jones needs no introduction as he has been known to Sri Sathya Sai Center of Calgary in the past with his valuable disclosures on important occasions. Dr. David Charles Jones first encountered Baba at least 25 years ago, and Baba soon became a main figure prominently in all 4 courses of his graduate certificate, culminating in love, self-realization, and leadership. Dr. David, linked with Calgary Baba Association, began with late, beautiful servant of Swami, Dr. Radhakrishnan. I think many old devotees might know Dr. Radhakrishnan. And Baba's sayings and stories appears in Dr. Jones' books, saying of Sri Sathya Sai Baba and the Lamp of Love, stories of Sathya Sai Baba. You will be able to get the copies of book if you are interested in after this end of the program. We are very fortunate indeed to have him as our guest of honor this afternoon. Sairam brothers and sisters, kindly join me in welcoming Dr. David Jones to address the congregation. Dr. David Jones.
Well, I'm going to be talking about the company of the good. That's really about you people. Company of the good is filled with heroes. And heroes are the inspiration for a life of the infinite possibility. 2 of my greatest heroes were on opposite sides in the American Civil War. General Robert E. Lee, the revered commander of the Southern Army of Northern Virginia, and President Abraham Lincoln, the beloved Commander-in-Chief of the Northern Forces. Lee and Lincoln. Both of them are my ideals of human character, and character to Baba, as you know, was our very grail, the very goal of our lives. Right after the surrender of his valiant army, signifying Southern defeat during the war, Robert E. Lee was struck by episodes of sorrow and regret and despair. A nearby young girl visited his home regularly, and one day she caught him in one of those moods. Looking at his sad face, she exclaimed, "Why will you look so heartbroken?" "Why shouldn't I?" Lee replied. "My cause is dead. I'm homeless. I have nothing on earth." "Yes, you have," the girl said. "You've got plenty of love and admiration." No one was loved more than Lee in the South. In the dark days after Lincoln's murder, Lee learned that a federal grand jury in Norfolk, Virginia, had indicted him for treason. After all, he had fought the other side. He'd been on the rebellion side. The common penalty, of course, for treason was death. As the South worried and Lee resolutely awaited arrest, his doorbell rang. It was a grizzly ex-Confederate veteran, tall, lean, and homespun, which was covered in the dust of the 100 miles he had just walked. 100 miles. Clenching Lee's hand, he said, "General Lee, I've followed you for 4 years and done the best I know how. Me and my wife live up on a little farm way up in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And we heard the Yankees wasn't treating you right. And I come down to see about it. I come down to see about it. If you will come up there, we'll take care of you the rest of your life the best as we know how. The veteran grasped both of Lee's hands and began to cry. He was a self-appointed protector, so earnest that Lee was shaken and started to weep uncontrollably too. Wondering what to do, Lee saw a suit in a box by the door. This won't be as loud as I was. All right, so he sees this suit in the box at the door. He doesn't know what to do. Both of them are crying. Remember that he fought in Lee's army for 4 years. He sees this suit in a box by the door, Lee does, and he says, "My friend, I don't need a thing. My friends all over the country, they've been very kind to me and have given me more clothes than I can use. So I want to thank you for coming, and I want to give you this new suit." Lee's daughter, Mildred, told what happened right after that. The man snatched his hand from General Lee, crossed his arms, straightened himself, and said, "General Lee, I can't take nothing off of you." After a few moments, he relaxed, put one hand on the box, and said, "Yes, I will, General. I will. I'll carry them back home and put them away. And when I die, the boys will put them on me." And that's how he was to be buried. Well, Lee is part of the company of the good, as are you. And this company is eternal. It spans the centuries. We're all shaped by the company we keep, said Baba. Dusk can fly if it chooses the wind as its friend. It has to end as slime in a pit if it prefers water. It has neither wing nor foot, but it can either fly or walk, rise or fall according to the friend it selects. With the company of the good, there are no compromises. No compromises. No bartering with the truth. No lauding some of the truth and not the rest, and some of the right and not all of it. There's no feeble sincerity in all of this, no flagging enthusiasm, no reverting to old forms of mindless conformity and mindless complacency. No half measures or quarter measures. No compromises. No compromises. Baba never compromised. In this company, self-realization is neither a myth nor a belief. It is a knowing within and a living according to the knowing. During the war, the same Civil War, 2 sons of the great Southern commander, Lee, who I just spoke of, were captured by Northerners. By the way, Lee nearly won the war for the South. He came that close. I was such a fan of that war that I said if you gave me 10 minutes, I could create a Southern victory. That's how close it was, and he was always outnumbered, so he was a great general. So during the war, 2 of his sons were captured by Northerners. One of them was wounded, and the other was under a flag of truce, offering to exchange himself for his disabled brother. In reprisal for the pending hanging of 2 Union men, Secretary of War Stanton sought to hang the 2 Lee boys, rushing to Richmond, which was the Confederate capital. General Lee implored Confederate President Jefferson Davis to intervene with Abraham Lincoln. Nobody was a better judge of character than Lee. "You need not worry," said Davis, "because Abraham Lincoln will not permit such an outrage." "Stanton will carry out this diabolical purpose," answered Lee, "and the Lincoln will know nothing about it." So Davis telegraphed Lincoln. Nearing midnight, Stanton, Secretary of War for the North, appears in the White House, answering an obligatory call from the President. Waving the telegram, Lincoln asked, "What does this mean?" "Mr. President, the lives of those 2 Union captains are as precious to their families as are the lives of those Lee boys to their family," Stanton answered. If Army are hanged in Richmond, both sons of Robert E. Lee should be hanged. Stanton, we are not savages, said Lincoln. Let us see what the book says. Opening the Bible, he stated, Stanton, here is a command from Almighty God. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I will repay, saith the Lord. Judgment was God's prerogative, not man's. Have you ever noticed all these judgments that people make? Judgment, that's not our business. Lincoln then telegraphed the commandant of Fortress Monroe, where those two Lee boys were, and he said this: immediately release both of the sons of Robert E. Lee and send them back to their father. Signed, Abraham Lincoln. And this is a guy who damn near won the war, just about defeat Lincoln. Lincoln's heart of compassion brooked no compromise. That heart was who he was, and neither the exigencies of war nor the victories of his remarkable opponent Lee could make him something else. War has got its rules, many severe and uncompromising too. And when another time Stanton stood by them and then regretted that he'd done so, Lincoln comforted him. He said, no, you did right in adhering to your rules. If we had such a soft-hearted old fool as I am in your place, there would be no rules that the army or the country could depend on. Well, war demands discipline and it demands duty, so it executes deserters and sleeping sentries. But Lincoln's love didn't imprison itself in rules unless clemency be a rule. There was no secretary ever to collate Lincoln's pardons. He made many pardons, but their general temper we know. Let this woman have her boy. Regarding one death sentence, Lincoln said, I could not think of going into eternity with the blood of that poor young man on my skirts. It's not to be wondered that a boy raised on a farm, probably in the habit of going to bed at dark, should, when required to watch, fall asleep. And I cannot consent to shoot him for such an act. This young man was later found dead, slaughtered on the field of the great Battle of Fredericksburg, which was one of Lee's great victories during the war. And by his still heart was a photograph of the president on which he had etched, God bless Abraham Lincoln. But before, long before, of course, uncompromising kindness had blessed him, as it does all of the company of the good. The Samaritan once encountered a calf caught in a bog, said Baba. A crowd of urchins were delighting in its struggles, and it was trying to free itself, but the Samaritan plodded into that mud and lifted that calf onto his shoulders and set it down in safety. When someone demanded why he had ruined their frivolity, they were having fun after all, he answered, the picture of that cow's agony cut into my heart. I could not go a step further. I had to get rid of that pain in my heart. The company of the good does not just show kindness and sympathy to the distressed. It identifies with the distress. It feels it completely, and it relieves the suffering so as to relieve it in themselves. To the company, there is only one, not many. To the Samaritan, the calf's pain was really his pain, and in relieving it, remember, this is very, very important, he was loving himself. You see, one of the great problems of our school system, it doesn't teach love very much, and it certainly doesn't teach self-love. It's very important for you to love yourself. If you don't love yourself, you can't advance in any direction. The company of the good is not exclusive. It's not a scissors type of humanity, always dividing people, things and people, and separating them and sundering them and cutting them and tossing them into classes or into castes. They're all connectors, the company of the good. They're all communers. They're all uplifters. The needles type of humanity, stitching society together. You've already seen that in the presentation so far. Stitching it together. Darning wholeness. Darning wholeness. In the Mahabharata, which you know well. The Pandeva, I'm sorry I mispronounced it because I know you guys pronounce it differently, but Pandeva sounds stronger to me having an English background than Pandava or whatever. So I'm going to call them Pandevas. The Pandeva brothers were built out of their inheritance in a crooked dice game orchestrated by the Kaurava cousins. Again and again they're humiliated and they're banished for 12 years into the wilderness, suffering before they can recover their estate. They survived primarily due to the leadership of their chief and eldest brother Dhamaraja, who uncompromisingly and unrelentingly follows the truth and right action. One day, Krishna asked Dhamaraja where his brothers were. And Dhamaraja replied, "Some of them are in Hastinapura city and the others are in the forest."
Dhamaraja, what's happened to your brains?
Krishna asked.
All of you 5 brothers are here in the forest, as you know. None is in the city of Hastinapura, the abode of the Kaurava pretenders.
Dhamaraja responded, "Pardon me, Lord. We are 105 brothers in all." Krishna pretended not to understand, and he repeated the 5 names and asked why the extra 100. "My father's sons are 5, said Dhamaraja. His brother, the blind Dhritarashtra, has 100 sons. When we fight with them, we are 5 and they are 100. But when we don't, we are 105. Now, the company of the good is inherently inclusive. One day, Pat McMahon, a Phoenix showman, hosted Mother Teresa, and he begged her to allow him to give her something. He just wanted to give her something. Just please, let me give you something. At last, she said, "Tomorrow morning, get up at 4 a.m. and go out onto the streets of Phoenix. Find someone there who believes he is alone and convince him that he's not. Inclusiveness, remember, always includes oneself. Something that company of the good never ignores or dismisses. You recall this story, I'm sure. 10 swimmers crossing the river, and they wondered if they were all safe on the other side. And all agreed there were only 9 left, one of them had drowned. They were wailing in agony when a passerby counts them. There's 10 really, all right. Nobody had drowned at all. Each person had counted everyone but himself. This is something that happens at the university all the time, at the highest levels.
This is the mistake every one of these encyclopedic intellects commit, said Baba. They count everyone except themselves. They know everything except the workings of their own minds and the methods by which they can attain inner calm. They are the culture that flies to the moon but is afraid to peep into the mind.
Well, the company of the good doesn't leave out its mind, or more importantly, its spirit or its source. And this source went by 1,000 names.
Some have faith only in love. Some believe only in truth. Some swear they care only for goodness about. But all these do not know that they are referring to God alone by these names. They too are pilgrims to the same sacred shrine.
And that shrine was within as well as without. It was the light of life within each person, the infinite intelligence, the essential spirit.
When the road ends and the goal is gained, said Baba, the pilgrim finds that he has traveled only from himself to himself. That the way was long and lonesome, but the God that led him unto it was all the while in him, around him, with him, beside him. He himself was always divine. His yearning was to merge with God, and that is but the sea calling to the ocean. His yearning Man loves because he is love. He craves for melody and harmony because he is melody and harmony. He seeks for joy because he is joy. He thirsts for God, for he is composed of God, and he cannot exist without him. Consequently, the company of the good is never demeaning or despairing. To it, every mortal is a mortal, a child of immortality. The child of what I call in my classes the infinite possibility. That's what Baba held out for you all. The infinite possibility. Said Baba, do not contemn your majesty, bewailing I'm unfortunate, I'm despicable, I'm downhearted. No, you're elated, you're enthroned, you are exalted. You've got it wrong. Baba disliked people, you know this, condemning themselves as sinners, born in sin, living in sin, fundamentally sin itself. I always remind such people that it is treason to their inner reality to heap such stark falsehoods upon their own heads. In some traditional Brahmin houses, and Christian houses too, there is a chant, I am sin itself, I am the commuter of sin, I am a sinful soul, I'm born out of sin. Most of the Protestant churches in this country have as their first principle the depravity of humanity. The iniquity was attributed even to one's forebears. The purpose was to induce a guilt-ridden piety, said Baba, through which they might atone for their sins by making offerings to the priestly class. These verses Baba changed in the temples where he lived. I am born as a pure being. My parents were pure parents, pure persons. My spirit is holy. My actions are sacred. Thus, the company of the good never limited its worth, nor its infinite potential, or its inexhaustible possibility, nor did it ever underestimate the power of choice. The king went hunting, forest, he overruns his retinue. He falls into this forsaken well. Perhaps you've heard this story. Luckily, as he plummeted, he grabbed a root that was sticking from the well wall and thereby defied death. After hours of anguish, he's holding on there. He heard a holy man reciting the names of the Lord above. The king cried out, and though he was a long way down, the holy man faintly heard the cry in his distress and threw down a rope and told the king to hold on to that rope tightly. Baba says the question now before the king was root or rope. Root or rope. For Baba, the root is the life most people lead, if they can even hold on. The rope is the way out. The root is the strength of the human, unallied with one's spiritual essence. The rope is the strength of spirit linked with the divine. The root is the conscious mind with all its prejudices and preconceptions, all its misunderstandings and half-understandings. The rope is a superconscious or the higher mind with its infinite wisdom, potential, and power. The root's the help given by the mass consciousness. You notice the mass consciousness doesn't help you too much. The rope is the upbearing gifted by the higher self, the secret of extrication from this world. The root's the way of struggle and grasping. Most people live this way, of imminent threat, fear of lack and loss and death. The rope is the way of ease and release, of constant empowerment and delight in abundance and fullness and love and life. In the end, the root is a deceptive, confining attachment, and the rope is the uplift to self-realization. And self-realization, said Baba, as you would know, is the fundamental purpose of all education. I've been trying to demonstrate that at the university, but so far only my students understand that, none of the profs do. Self-realization, the unwavering focus of the company of the good.
For the company of the good, think about this, the company of the good is each new insight you receive. I know Baba physically is gone, but he's still here. And he touches you, and he touches me. He inspires you, he inspires me. The company of the good is each new insight that you receive, and each new one after that. And so it is an infinitely large company. How many insights might you receive as you plumb the meaning of your love? How many? Or the application of your love. Focus here already is on love, of course. It's the only thing that matters. How many? How many insights might you receive as you plumb the meaning of your life or the application of your love? Would not the answer be, well, there is an infinite possibility. And that possibility, Baba spoke of all the days of his beautiful life. Thank you.